All right, welcome everyone to Learn at Lunchtime today. So glad you can join me. I am Sherry Trimble, one of the museum educators at the State Museum. So now I'd like to welcome our director of the State Museum, and this is Beth Hager. Welcome, Beth. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Sherry. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to State Museum Perspectives. Our last version of this particular program was just before we reopened to the public on April 30th, 2 months ago already. It has been fantastic to see people back in the building. We've really been enjoying having visitors and interacting with them. It's really been a boost to be open again. And we're very excited about it and hope to see you soon as well. We do have special hours right now, Wednesday through Saturday, 9 to 3, and Sundays, 12 to 3. But things will change as time goes on through the summer and after Labor Day. So please keep checking our website for more details and our social media for more information about what's going on at the State Museum. We'll also be having live in-person programs as well soon in the galleries. But today we'd like to highlight a very special research program that our zoology botany section has been conducting for several years out in the field. The exotic location in this work happens to be right in our backyard, so to speak, just north of Harrisburg at the fabulous Wildwood Park, a wonderful nature center and park. With us today to talk about this is Dr. Walter Meshaka. He is a herpetologist and senior curator of zoology and botany at the State Museum. And Heather Dock, who is the president of the nonprofit support organization, the Friends of Wildwood. And also our third guest is State Museum nature educator, Beth Erickson. She'll tell us about a special program that's taking place at Wildwood tomorrow morning in conjunction with the State Museum for the State Museum members. But first, let's talk to Walter and find out all about this research project. I know with a colleague from Dickinson College, Walter, you've been helming this turtle nesting project. Tell us all about it. What happens and what does it mean? How does it help us learn about our habitats and animal friends in our area?
Thanks, Beth. Around 2016, my friend and I, Gene Wingert, a professor at Dickinson College and a superb naturalist of Pennsylvania, especially South Central Pennsylvania, we saw something that was really bothersome to us. There was a concentrated site at Wildwood where turtles were nesting, and they were subject to unnaturally high predation and even digging up each other's nests while they were nesting. So it occurred to us that what we should do is head start the eggs, give them a chance and incubate them and release them. And that was in 2016. And then it morphed into something far more formal and scientific, where we were marking and recapturing the turtles, principally two species, the northern snapping turtle and the stinkpot, that were coming to this mulch pile that had been used historically to carpet and top the towpath that runs along the old Pennsylvania Canal. Now there you can see a picture of the mulch pile, and all those flags represent nests that were just laid. We would, and that's what we do.
So right now we're looking at a map of the park. Where exactly does this work take place? Like where's the pile that you just pointed out?
Sure.
You just showed us?
Sure. If you draw your attention to the left side of the map and you follow the little arrow that's going in circles, that indicates where the mulch pile is. To the left of all of that is Industrial Road. And then to the right is the old Pennsylvania Canal that you can see. And then of course there's a levee, and then there's Wildwood Lake.
Oh, what a great photo. This is by Don Giles at our parent agency, PHMC, went out and took these photos. It's most of them. Tell us about these particular critters and what you're learning about them.
Well, this is a wonderful shot of painted turtles, for which we have a different project going on. But they too can be very abundant here, and they're very easy to see. They come out and they bask, and people don't bother things. And so you can really get good close-ups, and you can really watch the behaviors of all sorts of animals there. Some common, some very rare.
Mm-hmm. There's your pile again.
Behind it, if you'll take a look, there's our work table. And a lot of work that's done there is we await turtles to come to nest. They usually come in big groups, 7 to 9, even 11 at a time. And then you'll go many, many days with 1 or 2. And it's typically the most of the nesting occurs from, about the 18th of May, really to about the 20th of June, but we still get a few odds and ends that'll come in through early July.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's what happens. The turtle will show up, and this is a young snapping turtle. They get a good deal bigger than this. She's about 9 or 10 years old. We sort of hog tie her, as you can see. The nylon string goes around her mouth and around the sides so that she can't bite. And now we're ready to process her. There's Erin Kennelly. She is a paid intern for this year. This was just taken a few weeks ago. Here's a female. As you can see, she's tied, so she can't hurt herself or us. And first we get a shell length. I guess you can go to the next. Then we get the depth of the shell. And then we get what's called a plastron length. So we get different types of measurements that are useful for different things. The last thing we take, if I remember how the slides are, is the weight. And this is very important, Beth, because one of the things that we do is, we intercept them when they come to nest. We take the measurements. We individually mark them and notch them so that we know who they are. One of them is a pit tag, like what you would put in a dog or a parrot or a cat. The other is notching that does not hurt them in the shell. It's pretty much like clipping a fingernail, so that we can know who the turtles are. But by getting a weight, we know how much they weigh before they lay their eggs. Then they will go and lay their eggs, and we get a weight of the female after she's laid her eggs, and then we measure the eggs themselves, and then we keep them and incubate them. Here we are. There's Sammy. She's a student from Dickinson that's very interested in this project. And what she and I are doing is we're counting rings on the shell, much as you would count rings on the tree, to see how old the turtle is. The difference is that at some point with turtles, the rings just start to blur and you really can't be sure. But at this age, you still can. And I think she was 9 or 10. This may have been her very first clutch that she laid. And there are some eggs. And snapping turtles are telltale. You can see that what they are. They look like little ping pong balls. Sometimes the nest is only 24 or 5 eggs. Sometimes they're up around 38 eggs, even 40. But on average, I would say the typical nest is about 30 eggs or 28 eggs. They'll hatch in 3 months. Before we go to this turtle, let me also say that with snapping turtles and stink pots, we get a lot of females. We'll get about 20 to 30 that will come each year. Snapping turtles, it's the same females. We get very, very few new ones. And the new ones that we get, most of them are young females, like the one that I had just shown you. The rest come here every year. So at the end of the season, we'll have 20 to 25 clutches of 25 to 30 eggs. If you do the math, that's a lot of eggs. And our hatching success is almost 100%. Let's go to the next slide. This is a stink pot. It's a female. They get pretty big up north. That's actually a large one, and it's typical of their size. If you look on the shell above my thumb, you almost can see rings. Go a little further up with your arrow. Now go to the right. There you go. You can almost see some rings that tell you the age of the turtle, but like snappers, it only works for a couple of years. Snapping turtles are known to exceed 100 years of age in some places. Nobody really knows how long stinkpots live. Up north, they probably live, I bet you 50 years anyway, maybe more. But they only take, rather than take 9 or 10 or 11 years to become mature, the stinkpots mature in about 5 years. That's an awful lot of growth for a little hatchling that starts off about the size of the end of my pinky. So we do the same for them. Now here we have it. We had 8 stink pots come in within about an hour and a half. That's an awful lot of work, but we got it down pretty well, so we know what to do. And as I had mentioned earlier on that mulch pile, those red flags represented all of their nests because they would nest in them. And then what we would do is then start taking the same kind of measurements that I mentioned about the snapping turtles. But what you can see here on the bottom left side of the table is the reader. And you can also see the teeny tiny pit tags. What's different though, the little Tupperware thing with a hole in it, is that once you inject them with the pit tag, the sheath that held it is no longer needed. And so we put it in there, kind of like bottle caps or something, and then they can be recycled properly. Well, an interesting thing happens, because you ask, well, what would happen after 90 days when the turtles hatch? Now, stink pots only lay about 5 to 7 eggs, and we'll get about 30 of those. That's a lot of eggs as well. Well, in September, and Heather can speak to this better than I can, there's a wonderful festival that's at Wildwood, and we put a bunch of turtles in various buckets, and mostly kids, but not entirely just kids, all march over like a little cavalcade. And we go right up to the bridge here, and on the count of 3, we release all of those turtles. All of those little specks are little snapping turtles that were released. So Beth, you mentioned a little bit earlier, you were wondering, well, what are some of the benefits, let's say, to doing this? Well, there's all sorts of benefits. Some things is it's the world around us, and you're supposed to know what's in the world. But it also, something else more very immediate is at work here. Humans have killed off top predators, cougars and wolves, that would otherwise keep mid-level carnivores, principally things such as raccoons, at a normal level, or deer in a normal level. But when you don't have them, then you have a superabundance of a mid-level carnivore that itself does not have a predator. Consequently, the likelihood of any of those eggs hatching is nil. So what we do is, by head starting them, we sort of bypass that problem. And even if only 1 or 2 or more turtles actually made it to adulthood by us doing it, that's actually beside the point, because the point is to get the eggs to hatch, which they typically would have, and then that becomes a food resource instead of just 1 raccoon or 2 raccoons for everything out there, all sorts of egrets and herons, even fish, even other turtles, water snakes and the like. So it just sort of disperses that energy that otherwise would not have been made available really on our account.
That's really interesting. And it's just that thing where we see again and again in our presentations and galleries of that unintended consequences factor that comes in, and you think, oh, you're getting rid of the higher level predators, and you don't realize what the fallout of that. And so this really highlights it. Is this a recent problem, or has this been going on for some time, or have you seen it accelerated in any way?
This has been known in the literature for a very, very long time. But what makes a program like this a little bit different, Beth, is that even though that's obvious to people like me and people that do this study, and probably if you just mentioned it to somebody on the street to think about it, they would say, sure, it makes sense. But in a program like this, we can provide an awareness to people so that they can see what the consequences are. And that's just good information to make good decisions about anything, whether it's the food you eat or how your health is, etc. The more you know, the better you can make good decisions. And in this case, it's an environmental one. And in a place like Wildwood, it's in some ways it's a natural laboratory, but it's also a protected place where they care and they want things in a healthy balance. And this is a way to affect that.
Absolutely, and a way to also just demonstrate the scientific method, you know, and
Absolutely, it is.
how you do science as a professional scientist.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Well, this seems like a good segue to Heather to talk a bit about Wildwood. And, you know, we're excited about this. Walter's been doing this for several years, but highlighting this and really partnering with Wildwood to bring programming and look at some cross pollination, if you will, between the two entities, the State Museum and Wildwood. It's very exciting. Heather, as I mentioned before, is the president of the Friends of Wildwood. And in her day job, she is a water quality specialist with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, which is one of our sister agencies, if you will, and we enjoy working with DEP on programs as well. Heather, first of all, when is that festival that that Walter was referring to and showed the picture of?
Yes, if you remember, Walter said that the eggs will hatch in about 90 days. So, and we're just wrapping up that period where the turtles are laying that. So, works out just perfect with our Celebrate Wildwood Festival, which this year is on Saturday, September 25th. And
Okay.
the event will be from 11 to 4. I'm not sure we finalized the time of the turtle release, but it's a day of all sorts of activities, lots of learning opportunities for the kids. The nature center will be open this year, which it wasn't last year. And yeah, just a fun all around time for everybody to get out and enjoy Wildwood and get to see the turtles.
And we'll be posting your website in a little bit, and they can find out particular details closer to the time. For a project like this for Wildwood, what does it mean to the park and your organization to have an opportunity to have some, I'm sure this is not the only one, but a real science project benefiting the region?
Yes. Yeah, Wildwood is a very unique park, being in an urban setting. Yeah, surrounded by highways and industrial road. There's a lot of different truck traffic and things like that. But to have this special area, including the lake, which is kind of how Wildwood started, and now with the help of the Friends, it's developed into having a nature center and having more educational resources and opportunities for this research that will help to continue the park to survive in the future. So yeah, having the connections with Walter and also Gene Winger from Dickinson is a valuable resource. We the board enjoys the information they share with us, and that information they're able to convey it in ways that the public understands the importance and can help us to preserve the future of Wildwood.
Mm-hmm. Great. So tell us a little bit more about Wildwood, the park. It is the agency, the government the agency that runs it is the county, correct? Department of the Dauphin County?
Yes, Wildwood is actually a park in the Dauphin County Parks and Recreation System. So it is a county-owned park. The Friends of Wildwood are the nonprofit organization that supports the park. And so we have this very successful private public partnership between the county and the Friends of Wildwood. What many people don't realize is that a lot of the extra amenities and especially the research and some of the programs that happen at Wildwood, such as the boardwalks or the nature center, which was fully funded through the support and fundraising efforts and grant efforts through the Friends, as well as a nice donation from Mr. Olwine to make that a reality. But all of those things around the park, all those special touches, those are a result of the Friends of Wildwood and our active membership of almost 300, as well as our supporting board of about 15 to 20 community members that help make those decisions on where our donations go, our grant funding, what projects that supports. And yeah, just passed through a picture of the painted turtles. So I know Walter showed a photo of the turtles. This is a common sight if you go to Wildwood this time of the year, look in the
Oh,
canal and you see the turtles sunning themselves. You look out on the lake, you see various species of birds. You'll see photographers all over Wildwood trying to capture all those special moments. One of the most unique things about Wildwood is you can be up close and personal with the Wildwood, with the wildlife, and the naturalists there will be sure to point out those unique frogs, the turtles, the snakes, the different birds that utilize Wildwood and make it a special place.
If I could just touch upon a few things that you mentioned, Heather, that really add to the value of it all is the board is made up of a wide range of professional backgrounds, as you know, and that gives a really good perspectives from people that care about the mission of the park. And when Heather mentions about being able to get up close and personal to things, she's absolutely right, and that is thanks to an ordinance most recently that prohibits any taking, molesting of any sorts of plants and animals there. Consequently, always remember this: it's people that make animals wild, and once you leave them alone, they settle into their routines, and you can watch them. And as Heather was mentioning, you know, all sorts of animals then will go about their daily lives doing the things that they do. And there is a dedicated following of photographers that are very invested in this, that have a sense of protection for it, as well as the vast majority of visitors actually care about nature with varying amounts of knowledge about it. And there are some pocket guides for some of them. The most recent one was senior authored by Gene Wingert, and I'm the junior author on it. It talks about the many amphibians and reptiles here and where to see them and how they live. So that once again, just as this project provides awareness to people, a booklet like that does, the festival does, and that kind of outreach with a goal of education and awareness has really gone a long way. I've seen it since I became a part of things with Friends of Wildwood and Research of Wildwood.
Thanks, Walt. Yeah, yeah, and thanks for serving on our board and being a part of the Friends of Wildwood. Yeah, as you mentioned, yeah, some of the ways that the Friends have specifically supported the turtle research is we've provided some funding so that you guys were able to purchase the equipment to be able to do the research. So that was definitely a key part. As you mentioned, the amphibian and reptile guide is now for sale in the Nature Center, and so that's a new development, and that helps you guys to it takes your research and puts it in a format that everybody can enjoy. And yeah, it gives us that history of the park. In 2021, these are the turtles and the reptiles and amphibians that can be found at Wildwood. And another way that the Friends have supported the turtle research is we've provided support for a weather station at the Nature Center. And so as we go experience climate change and just general evolution of nature, that weather data is used as part of the research that Walter and Gene are doing at Wildwood. So yeah, the Friends have the board members are always encouraged by the results of the research, and always enjoy when Gene or Walter bring the eggs to or the hatched turtles to share with the board so we can see what what the end result is, and then again another shout out about our upcoming festival, Celebrate Wildwood, on September 25th. And into the fall season, and it's just a great day for everybody to come out and enjoy the park and celebrate what Wildwood is, and then also experiencing the release of the hatched turtles that hopefully will survive and continue to increase the population at Wildwood.
Heather, if I could add too that for folks that would not know this, but maybe we take it for granted, the actual financial cost for the work isn't necessarily prohibitive, but it's still money and it's not easy to get. And it's an incredible value to be supported that way, because a lot of the work that we do there, it's mostly physical. You're there and you catch and you measure and you do this. The pit tags are not cheap. Traps are not cheap. And so 1,000 here and 1,000 there may in the grand scheme of things not seem so much, but it is a lot of money, and it's put to really good use. And the friends, it's you're as strong as your board is. And for people that are watching this, it does sort of sound like a little bit of an advertisement for Wildwood, but it should be, because it is an oasis in a cement jungle for forest, and it's cram packed with wildlife. And even though we talk about the September festival, Beth, there's also one in the spring. There's also art and nature that's done. There's also a superb natural photography competition. So there's all sorts of ways to engage people that like nature at a variety of levels. Now, in the case of what Gene and I and his paid interns that he successfully competes for out of Dickinson's funds, we can make good contributions to science, which we should, but we also can translate it, which we should, to public consumption for awareness. So I just encourage you, anybody here, I would be saying this even if I weren't doing work but had been watching it here, that this is a really good model, a good example of how the right combination of people and organizations, you can really make something big and very useful ultimately for people that are caring about the nature around us when you put these things together.
Let me break in here for a moment and say, I'm holding a copy of the book. How do we get that on screen here? Can you highlight me? Yes, I'm holding the booklet. It's hot off the press. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. As Heather mentioned, it's being sold at the Nature Center at Wildwood, but we'll also have it at the State Museum. We don't have it yet, but we will have it soon. Heather, did you have some more slides to share with us before we talk to Beth Erickson?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a little bit more about the role that the Friends play, and we were actively been taking on some more capital projects as the one of the first projects that the Friends had initiated at Wildwood was the boardwalks, and then the Nature Center shortly followed after that. And just wanted to highlight that we continue to make the park better and more accessible for everyone. So this was one of our projects that we finished last year. The Friends raised the funds. We had support from the county as well as a grant from DCNR, and so we were able to put in another permanent restroom, so to improve the experience for all of the guests, especially at our festivals and times when the Nature Center isn't open. And as I mentioned, the Wildwoods provides an opportunity to see the wildlife up close and personal, and one of those ways is our boardwalk, which makes the park accessible for wheelchairs and strollers, and it makes it more accessible for all community users. And unfortunately, after many years of wear and tear and many flooding events, there is a section of the boardwalk that is highly used in the educational programs, especially to access the areas where the frogs like to hang out. And so unfortunately, we've had to temporarily remove that section of boardwalk. So so it's preventing the activity that we usually see on there for everybody to see that wetland up close. So that this is one of the projects that we're currently raising money for, is to repair the boardwalk and allow everybody the opportunity to continue to experience the nature up close and personal. So yeah, we got lots of things going on. As Walter mentioned, the Art in the Wild, that's an ongoing exhibit. If you walk the trails, you'll see those different exhibits. So yeah, Wildwood has a lot to offer for everyone out there.
Well, what I think is tremendous is that it's exciting to learn about the science going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes as well. But you know, when my family goes to Wildwood, we feel like we've gone somewhere. It's so easy to get to, and it's so nearby, but you really just get lost. You don't get lost. It's very easy to get around, but you're just lost in nature there. And you also run into a number of people who are enjoying it as well. It's very well used, and it's just a tremendous resource in our backyard. Well, let's segue then to Beth Erickson, our nature State Museum nature educator, and talk about going to Wildwood tomorrow with our members. Let's talk about that program a bit. If we could bring up Beth Erickson. Thank you, Heather and Walter. And we'll have some questions here in just a moment.
So I can tell you, whoops, I can tell, yeah, I'm here. I can tell you about our event tomorrow. It's at Wildwood Park, and it's for State Museum of Pennsylvania members to view this active turtle research that's being conducted. So it's going to start, an educator from Wildwood Park is going to guide a walk along the towpath trail. We'll go to the research site. Then Dr. Meshaka and his colleagues will discuss the biological and environmental aspect of the research and how they're going to use the interpretation of data and how that will affect the local ecology of this non-native versus native turtle species at Wildwood. Plus, the best part is a great opportunity to view these turtles up close. Not so close with the snapping turtle, but I was able to go out a couple weeks ago and see it, and it's really amazing to see these small creatures. And it's, as Walter said, it's that combination of education and awareness that's important, and we're able to offer that for our members tomorrow to come out and have that special interaction. And
this is a first time program for us. We're trying it out with our members, and we have 2 sessions going on. And we just want to tell you about it because this is something we might continue to do depending on our experience tomorrow. And we're just really excited to partner with Wildwood to be able to do this. We're kind of calling it Walks with Walter in Wildwood, the WWW series there. But this is something that the beginning of, I hope, a great continuation of a great partnership. And then also, Beth, you are in charge of Nature Lab at the State Museum. That's your program, and I anticipate we'll have some cross-pollination again, as I keep saying, with Wildwood. Invite Wildwood folks to come out with us.
Yeah, definitely a goal to do that. And a lot of our members have already visited with Walter in the past in Nature Lab, where he's talked about turtles and probably talked about Wildwood at some point as well. Right. So this is a nice on-site way, since we don't have that outdoor space at the museum. This is that great collaboration between research and curation that we're doing by being on site. So yeah, so Walter and his turtles are the highlight for tomorrow.
Beth, would it be okay? Could we go back to that picture of the snapping turtle? Okay, I'm glad that we got to have this picture.
There's the turtle.
Now, here's the reason I wanted to show this to you. There are 2 things to notice about this. The first is that turtle is not nesting on the mulch pile. It's nesting along the towpath, and that gravel is packed pretty tight. And along with how we would see nests depredated on the mulch pile, we do now see them to this day heavily depredated along the towpath, as well as even the parking lot. I mean, the turtles are every place, but they live a very long life, and they, with the evolutionary bet that they can outlast that. So that's one of the things I wanted to draw attention to. The other one is, if you look at the turtle, let's just say between its head and its shoulder, you look on the shell, the edge of the shell, you should see a notch. You see that notch?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of several notches that gives it a unique numerical code, so that just looking at the turtle, we know who it is. Now, with the years go by, these things can start to smooth out. We have to enhance them again. But there's also the pit tag inside, and that's corroborative, so we're certain about who we have. So right at a first glance, we knew immediately that this was a recapture turtle.
Okay. Well, quickly, we have several questions from our audience. Let's get to this really quick. First question is, at any one, lost it for a moment. At any one time, how many turtles do you estimate live in the Wildwood property?
Okay. For painted turtles, we're pretty sure that in the canal alone, there's about 400. We've done every math you can imagine. There's about 400. But that's not including the lake. That's a whole nother thing, and we don't really trap there. The lake, incidentally, is starting to not be a lake anymore, and it's rapidly succeeding into a marsh because of all the extra effluent coming down Paxton Creek from all of the development. That's a whole nother issue about trying to restore that wetland. So that's going to change as things dry out, you see, and it starts to turn into a meadow. But to try to give you more direct answers on this, snapping turtles, are you ready for this? We don't have a clue. All I can tell you is there's a gazillion of them. Why do I say that? And that's because, with the exception of the females that come back and forth to just that one little spot that nest, every snapper we've trapped about 100 over the years that'll go into the traps. We've never gotten a recapture, and that tells you that there must be lots of them. And the fact that eggs are laid all over Wildwood, also corroborates that there's just a lot of them. The stink pots are the toughest of them all on this one, because they will not go into the traps. Now, I know from knowing about this turtle that that's a superb place for them. It's eutrophic, it's shallow, it's muddy, they love it. There's a lot of food, that's why there's lots of turtles. I wouldn't even venture a guess. I just couldn't do it. But safe to say, there's an awful lot.
Well, along the same lines, another question is, are there different types of turtle? The different types of turtles at Wildwood, are they competitors to each other, or do they live in harmony with each other?
A large stink pot and a smallish snapping turtle eat similar foods. A large snapping turtle will very easily eat a small stink pot. Painted turtles are on their own trajectory. They just sort of eat their own things, more vegetarian, and it's so not so much. That help?
Okay. What are the rarest turtles? Let's think about the state as a whole, put it into context. What are the rarest turtles in Pennsylvania, and what are the most common? Okay,
Wildwood is a good reflection of that. There used to be bog turtles at Wildwood, and they're just not there. Wood turtles turn up from time to time at Wildwood, and they're sort of in trouble. The bog turtles are federally protected. The eastern box turtle, which everybody knows, you see them after it rains, they cross the roads. There's fewer and fewer of them because of roads. They're also at Wildwood. They don't have federal protection, just like wood turtles don't, but they too are not very common anymore in the state when they really ought to be. If you really want to know, if you really want to see turtles, it's painteds and snappers. So that's the turtle du jour anywhere you go.
Okay. Another question is referring to challenges to turtles across Pennsylvania, or what we've seen at Wildwood. What is this similarly happening across the state, across the region? Are there other challenges that you know of in Pennsylvania that we're not seeing at Wildwood, and that are, that you can tell us about?
Sure. The issue of unnaturally high levels of predation that's countrywide, that's Pennsylvania wide, and you see it as a microcosm here at Wildwood, which we just talked about. Roads, that's another problem. Roads are a source of slaughter for turtles. In fact, I saw 5 crushed nesting female nap turtles on North Front Street
Mm.
on the 21st when they were all going to nest. And it takes a long time for a turtle to get that big and to live a long life. So when they get killed, that's quite a hit. That too is a Pennsylvania problem. That too is a national problem. The third one, Beth, and again, you don't really see this so much at Wildwood as you do elsewhere, but it's a loss of habitat. If the habitat's gone, if the wetland is gone, there's no more room for turtles or frogs or wading birds and the like. That sounds very obvious, but it's a very significant cause of stress for healthy populations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Someone asks, why do the turtles lay so many eggs?
It is an evolutionary gamble that high fecundity, by laying lots of eggs every year with a long life, an investment with a long life, that is how you make more of yourselves. That you're not a mosquito that just breeds once and that's it. You're sort of, in an evolutionary and natural selection standpoint, you're taking the long view of things. So that things might be bad for a while. It's just like the cicadas waiting 17 years, that you can outlast these problems. That's how. So really, a turtle has to be able to live a long time. And in the case of snapping turtles, it's an investment. They're not ready to lay their eggs until they're about 10 years old around here. And then if they can do that, they're pretty safe for most things except people, and they can live on to be 100, laying 25 to 40 eggs a year. Now, certainly, if every one of them grew up, there'd be a world full of snapping turtles, but that's just not how things go. But the goal is that you have an opportunity year after year after year to contribute to the population so natural selection can take an effect and sharpen the blades of the best populations.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we cover all sorts of things in these interviews.
Yes, you do. We do. Someone wants to know, are snapping turtles ever aggressive?
I would not ever use the word aggressive. I would call it highly defensive. Basically, if you leave them alone, they just go about their business. If you grab them, they grab back. So
Okay.
what is interesting, though, Beth, is that there are some snapping turtles that we've handled and they've made no attempt to bite. Now, we don't drop our guard, but that's just how they are. And then there are others where they're just coming at you every which way they can.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because they're defending themselves. But when you walk up to them nesting, if you see them nesting, just like that picture about the one that was nesting there, we sat and watched her nest from, 3 feet away. So if you leave them alone, they go about their business. If I can add one more thing, I don't want to interrupt with good questions, but something did cross my mind. We've had wildlife game cams at night. I don't know, Heather, if I mentioned this to you, but we were able to keep track of how many predators were hitting the thing by seeing them and also seeing signs of them poking, and different species make different sort of scrapes and such. Well, over the years, from 2016 to now, we have very, very few predator sign because they live long too. And they quickly learn that it's just not worth their effort because there aren't any eggs to eat. Isn't that neat?
Oh, wow. Some other questions just popped up. Someone says, some comments. Does Wildwood encounter any issues with the public trying to feed the turtles?
Heather, chime in on it too. I've never seen. People did used to harvest them very heavily because they were allowed to eat them, but that they put a stop to that. And as I mentioned earlier, there's such a community buy-in for care of nature of all sorts that kind of behavior isn't tolerated. Cops are called, LEOs are called, as they should be.
Yeah, I can't recall of hearing any complaints about or observations of the public feeding the turtles. I think more of the issue was, taking them home and things like that.
Now, there is still a problem, though, that's completely from a different angle, which is releasing turtles. And people release red-eared sliders That's against the law to do. They're exotic to Pennsylvania. And there is a thriving population at Wildwood, and it's getting bigger. And that's sort of what happens with red-eared sliders, is they tend to do extremely well, and they're kind of pushy. They push other turtles off the logs when they're basking, and they eat more food, and they're sort of like the party guest that won't leave. So that's a negative thing that is happening. Wow, how often we really don't know, but we do know that it is a self-sustaining population. And some of them, were recently released because they come looking up at you like they're looking for a handout.
Okay, here is an comment and a question from someone. Living above High Spire Reservoir in the Pennsylvania Canal, we experienced snapping turtles traveling up our road for quite a distance from the reservoir to lay their eggs. Our development is on their old territory. Any idea how far a female will travel to lay her eggs? It's a long, slow travel for them. And she also comments that it's amazing.
They'll go a few hundred yards. That's a long way.
Sure is. Okay.
But remember, they only go that far because they have to. So if the nesting site is good right close by, then they'll use that instead. Such as that one turtle that was photographed on the towpath. She wasn't even 2 feet from the water.
Walter, I just thought of two things. One is our skunk diorama in Mammal Hall at the State Museum. Aren't those turtle eggs that are depicted? And I remember you working particularly with those eggs when we were restoring the dioramas.
Yeah, we got real eggs, and then they were able to make models from them. That was nice. I was thinking about that myself, Beth, and I just thought, how do I bring that up? But that's an excellent example of seeing how predators will forage on turtle nests. You can often tell them apart by how they dig them up, what it looks like afterwards. And you know what? Thinking of dioramas, for anybody who doesn't know this, in Ecology Hall, there is absolutely an exhibit that is Wildwood. It's wonderful. We'll be enhancing it, no doubt, at some point.
Yeah, exactly. This is a almost 50-year-old exhibit.
Yeah.
Has some good content in it, but it definitely needs to be renovated, and we will be working on that or doing a new gallery. But that mural that is in there is by one of the mural painters of Mammal Hall. It's a gorgeous mural. It is not, and this is one of the problems with Ecology Hall, it is not identified as Wildwood.
Yeah.
But go in there and see if you can find it and see if you can recognize it, because it's a beautiful mural. And when you go to Wildwood, you're like, yes, this is it. So that's another nice connection between the two. I also noticed in the question, someone was asking about the booklets being on sale at the Nature Center, the Old Wine Nature Center at Wildwood. And that's correct. That's what we said earlier, right, Heather?
That's correct. Yes.
Good. And then we'll have them later as well. And we have the other booklets that Walter has produced.
I wanted to do one little plug here, because one of the questions that was popping up was people wanted to know more about turtles in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to turn to my fellow educator, Beth. You are doing a program on Pennsylvania turtles as one of the Learn at Lunch Times, the Adventures in Nature Lab. And that's your August program?
Yes, we do have that coming up. Walter, it's not that we don't love you, but you are in demand all over the place. So we have some support coming in from another agency with some information specifically in a general view of Pennsylvania turtles. So Walter is specifically doing this look at these two types of turtles found at Wildwood. So we're going to talk in general about turtles, where they're found in Pennsylvania, and natives versus non-natives in August.
Okay. Well, I think that is all of the questions, really good questions, and we've had a really good audience today, as well as wonderful guests on the program. And I want to thank Walter, Heather, and Beth Erickson for being with us today. Thank you all very much. I'm excited. I'm going to stop by at Wildwood tomorrow, just to see what's going on with the members and say hi. And I'm just really looking forward to it. Encourage everyone to visit Wildwood and the State Museum, your state museum. Next month, I'm going to be talking with some of our volunteers and our volunteer coordinator, Amy Jukas, about volunteering at the State Museum. Because of the pandemic, we have missed our volunteers, haven't had them in yet, but it's time to start thinking ahead. We've got some wonderful exhibits opening this fall and lots of work to do and lots of people to meet. And so we want to talk about and with some of our wonderful State Museum volunteers. That'll be on Friday, July 23rd at noon for Learn at Lunchtime. Following this week, so just next week, we're already into July next week, hard to believe. Amy Hammond will be doing Learn at Lunchtime Artist Conversations. Actually, the title is Fashioning a New Nation. She'll be talking with one of our curators, Katie McGowan, about paint art and costume, historic clothing and art, and it'll be very interesting. Check that out. In 2 weeks, Beth Erickson, Adventures in Nature Lab, will be doing Fishes of the Susquehanna River. Brad Smith, our program director, on July 16th, will be presenting artifact legends from the State Museum in our wonderful collection. And of course, I already mentioned we're going to be talking about volunteering at the State Museum. Again, wonderful to see everyone today. Thank you, guests. Thank you, participants. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.